So I just finished James Gunn's first project of his new DCU, Creature Commandos, and whilst I did enjoy it, especially the twist at the end, I can't help but feel that Circe was, well, completely and utterly mishandled as a villain. So today I'll be taking you through why I think this and why I just didn't end up hating the villain of the show, which is pretty important if you ask me. Now, I will be discussing spoilers, so spoiler warning for Creature Commandos. So, I've seen many people online take issue with how Circe is defeated, claiming that there's a big power scaling issue with the fact that she's taken down by a weasel. And to be honest, I can see where this is coming from. In comics, Circe is very powerful, but this isn't the big issue that I have with Circe in the show. For the sake of the plot, Circe did have to be captured by the Commandos in some way or another. And yeah, this scene isn't great in convincing you that a character we just saw quite comfortably defeat the bride can be taken down by a literal weasel. And also, for some reason, Circe just doesn't conjure up magic when her hands are still free during the fight. But because this scene moves the plot of the show forward, I didn't particularly mind it too much. My issue comes from two things. Number one is Circe's characterization in the show, and number two is how this characterization then compares to the Commandos themselves. So, let's start with the characterization. Circe is meant to be a villain, and quite a cruel villain too. Whilst I'm not particularly familiar with her, I've just not read that many comics with her, I am aware that she is a witch of immense power and uses this power to do horrible things to many innocent people, which is why she ends up battling Wonder Woman. Her story isn't like tragic or anything. She got banished by Queen Hippolyta of the Amazons for turning people into pigs, and therefore hates the Amazons. And another part of her characterization is she also just hates men for no real reason. So she's not at all really intended to be some tragic character that you can root. She is just quite an evil person. The problem is though, I told you that because I did research for this video. I didn't tell you that because it was established in the show. No history of cruel, violent acts is established. No history of even fighting Wonder Woman for all we know. In fact, she even enlists an army of men despite, like I'm mentioning, she's supposedly having complete contempt for men in general. I mean, we don't even know if she turns people into animals in the DCU because none of it is established. I mean, I guess James Gunn expects you to go into it having some sort of knowledge of the character, but she's a Wonder Woman character. Why should you go into a Creature Commandos show with knowledge of a Wonder Woman villain? To me, I feel like it really could have benefited from setting up who she is as a character instead of just throwing us right into the action, which is something Gunn is a fan of doing. I mean, we saw it with Superman. There's no Superman origin story because you're expected to know what his origin is. But the difference is that's Superman. Not one of the most recognizable like superhero on the planet. I think a lot more people will know his story and character traits than Circe, to be honest. So, what do we know about this version of Circe? Well, she's out committing terror in the country of Pokolistan with the end goal of killing the princess there. In response, the Creature Commandos are deployed to save the princess because Pokolistan is allied with the USA. Okay, so far this is fine. She's doing a pretty terrible thing for seemingly no reason at all, and is very clearly the villain. Okay, so then Circe gets captured in the previously mentioned quite controversial fight scene, the princess is saved, and we get to see Amanda Waller and Rick Flag interrogating Circe in Belle Reve prison. So Circe claims in this interrogation that she was trying to kill the princess because she could see into the future and the princess will go on to destroy the entire world, and so Circe was actually saving the world. She even demonstrates this ability directly on Amanda Waller, so Amanda Waller can also see the future vision of the princess causing the end of the world, and they bring in some Themysciran expert who also verifies that everything Circe is saying is legitimate. Okay, I mean, it's interesting, but now Circe was doing it to save the world, which puts her as a bit of an anti-hero, if anything. But then Amanda Waller sends the Creature Commandos to go back and kill the princess now that she's seen Circe's vision, but Rick Flag Sr. refuses to believe that Circe was telling the truth because he fancies the princess, and so Rick Flag Sr. teams up with Frankenstein to go and save the princess. Rick Flag Sr. and Frankenstein then learn that the Themysciran expert that Amanda Waller brought into Belle Reve was actually being impersonated by Clayface, so the verification of Circe meant absolutely nothing. I thought at the time that this was a bit of a boring decision and a bit cliche. Now Rick Flag Sr. is going to jump in at the last second and explain everything and it'll all be okay. And like he didn't even verify how long the body's been dead. He just knew by looking at it, never asked anyone how long she'd been dead, but I guess we'll see how it plays out. So then the Creature Commandos go to assassinate the princess, and they choose Nina, the fish lady, to commit the murder, because the princess is currently swimming and Nina is a fish lady. But Weasel loves the princess too much because the princess reminds Weasel of an old friend, and also the princess played catch with him, and so intervenes. This gets everyone's attention, including the Pokolistani princess, who then stabs and kills Nina the fish lady in self-defense. So I thought this was a nice subversion, that Flag didn't end up stopping everyone in time and it ends quite tragically, but it's Nina the fish lady, not even the princess, who ends up dying. But you can't even really blame the princess because it was self-defense. So a nice, tragic and subverted, almost tragic end, all things considered. Oh, that's right, the twist. So it turns out that Clayface was hired by the princess to impersonate the Themysciran expert after Circe had in fact been verified. This is of course in an attempt to decredit the verification, and like I mentioned earlier, it's why we never see Flag actually learning of the time of death of the Themysciran expert, because, well, this would have verified the death as fraudulent and not discrediting Circe's future visions. So then the bride kills the princess and the remaining Creature Commandos walk off into the sunset. Pretty good ending in my opinion, and pretty great twist too. I like this twist a lot, and like I mentioned earlier with the lack of time verification from Flag, it's sort of foreshadowed earlier and you can catch on. I literally thought to myself, why is he not verified when the Themysciran expert died? And that ended up being paid off, which I felt was a really nice way of, executing the twist. So let's get back to Circe and let's sum up everything that Circe did in this show. All in all, Circe tried to kill a princess who, for a fact, was going to destroy the world, then gets captured and interrogated by the Creature Commandos and is perfectly compliant, and helps them go back for the princess and save the world. So why is the cruel villain trying to save the world and not doing cruel things, and then helping others to save the world when she can't? And she's the villain of the show up until literally the last 10 minutes when that twist is revealed. Now that's my first issue with the characterization. Circe isn't particularly evil, none of her traditional traits are really established, and she doesn't really do much evil. In fact, she's more of an anti-hero. But if you remember my second issue, which is how this then compares to the characterization of the Commandos, well, in my opinion, this is a bit worse. Let's sum up Circe's actions again real quick. Committed terror to kill the princess, got captured, helped the Creature Commandos. Okay, now let's sum up the actions of the Creature Commandos. Defend the princess against Circe, defeat Circe, learn the princess is bad, commit terror to kill the princess. So both parties commit terror to kill the princess, killing countless. However, the Creature Commandos beat Circe up, whereas Circe helps the Creature Commandos. Do you see my issue? The Creature Commandos are just in my opinion, shown to be worse than Circe in this show. Now, to be fair, Circe is shown on the news to be committing a whole bunch of terror, and I think to more innocent people, whereas the Creature Commandos kill the guards of the Pokolistani princess. However, this is more told than shown, and if you've heard of the writing advice of show not tell, telling us that Circe has committed a bunch of terror isn't anywhere near as effective as just showing us, which the show doesn't do because it didn't have enough runtime, I guess. But by refusing to spend more time establishing this, the effect is just not had on me as a viewer, that I buy that Circe is particularly worse than the Creature Commandos. Comparatively, we do actually watch the Creature Commandos killing the Pokolistani guards on the way to the to the castle, which is actively showing them committing terror. Now, like I said, these are the royal guards of the Pokolistani princess, but I mean, it's just their job. They're not really like harming anyone currently, they're just defending their employer. And they get killed for it. So we actually see them committing terror, which gives their terror a lot more validity than Circe's terror, which we just are told about on a quick news segment towards the start of the show. Now, I don't even have a particular issue with the fact that the Creature Commandos could be interpreted as slightly worse than the villain of Circe. If the show wants to highlight the moral greyness of a, force of monsters like this, then that's fine. This even happens when the team defeats Circe in the aforementioned controversial fight, where the bride says,
"You wanted monsters, you got monsters."
One slight issue with this, however. James Gunn didn't want to highlight the moral greyness of the characters. How do I know this? Well, basically every single episode of the show, parallel to the main story, you get a tragic backstory of each main character of the show, which of course includes every single member of the Creature Commandos. You have things like the bride being a tragic creation to fall in love with Frankenstein, but she didn't want to fall in love with Frankenstein, and so Frankenstein is trying to force her to fall in love with him. You have G.I. Robot, who's just this robot that loves killing Nazis, but is kind of purposeless now that there are no Nazis. So if anything, Creature Commandos have given him a purpose. You have Nina, who was experimented on by her scientist dad because she was about to die from this illness, and so was made into a fish. Oh no, not illness. Her lungs were outside of her body or something, so she was made into a fish so she could breathe properly. But of course, was then excessively bullied for being a fish. So this doesn't work for me, because if the Creature Commandos are humanized and tragic, but are worse than Circe, then this means that Circe, in my mind, could easily be as humanized or as tragic. But like I established near the start of the video, that's not who Circe is. She isn't tragic, she's just a horrible villain. For me, Creature Commandos fails to make me hate Circe as a villain because they just don't show her being evil enough, allowing the villain that the protagonists face to compare in similar scales of bad actions to the protagonists themselves. And that, in my opinion, is how Creature Commandos mishandles completely the character of Circe. So, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed my breakdown of why I really did not particularly enjoy this portrayal of Circe. If you enjoyed, feel free to like or subscribe, and hopefully see you in a future video. Bye.